very serious emergency situation. 48 people in a Continental Airlines Express jet, and you're looking live right now at what's happening with crews on the ground, waiting for this airline jet to come in and get on the ground.
And we've got a spokesman now for that internet webpage, FlightAware.com, a live flight tracking system that is monitoring the situation, allowing people who log on to be able to see where the plane is at this very moment, where it's been in the past. It has been burning fuel for over 2 hours and 15 minutes. Let's talk to that person right now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. From your perspective, what can you tell us about this unfolding situation?
We've been tracking this flight since just about 5 or 10 minutes after the 4 o'clock hour when the flight departed from Houston Intercontinental Airport, began climbing to its cruising altitude and ultimately leveled off at about 3,000 feet and then up to 4,000 feet. And it cruised around at that altitude for roughly 45 minutes before it descended back to 2,000 feet. And that's the altitude, roughly 1,900, 2,000 feet, where it's been circling since then. It originally departed and began with an airspeed of about 230 knots, at one point reaching 320 knots, which is roughly 375 miles an hour. Since then, it's been keeping the speed at between 170 and 200 knots, which is roughly 225 miles an hour. So that's the speeds the pilots have been circling around and entering various holding patterns and airport flybys and whatnot. So we received data from the FAA's radar facilities, and we received that data. It's a few minutes delayed, but we receive a radar position updates and altitude and airspeed. And what we show right now is the flight is 210 knots, which is roughly about 230 miles an hour, and at 1,900 feet. This entire time, you could, of course, track the flight on our website, you said, FlightAware.com, and there's a link on the main page. But the whole time we've been mapping it, and you can see the events as it unfolds and circles and continues to presumably stay in the area of Houston Intercontinental. As you can observe, it's been circling largely to the north and occasionally to the west of the airport. So it has not been heading back towards the area of the major metro area of Houston, but predominantly circling in the northern area.
Well, Mr. Baker, let me ask you a question. Looking at your webpage here, it shows that among the information that this flight from Houston en route to Minneapolis on a normal flight takes about 2 hours and 29 minutes. We're almost at that mark right now from the time that it first took off and encountered problems. We're at 2 hours and 18 minutes. Do you, by chance, know why in situations like this, why the aircraft wasn't just allowed to burn fuel by going to its intended destination and then attempting the emergency landing, in this case, say, in Minneapolis?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I should mention that I am a pilot, but I'm not actually an airline transport pilot or a pilot of this particular type jet aircraft. However, the issue is that under no circumstance when you have gear failures, at least in most aircraft that I'm familiar with, do you attempt to retract the gear. The concern is that if you have a blown tire or some gear malfunction, if you retract the landing gear, you may create a condition where the landing gear will not come down at all, or you could create a worse problem, or you could even damage the infrastructure more so. Certainly we don't know what's happened at this point completely, but the reports and the video footage are indicating the blown tire. And so, you know, it's a much better situation to have the gear down in a blown tire than to maybe have some fragments of that tire damage the gear system and not have any gear down whatsoever. Due to the way the aircraft are designed, they cannot cruise at a high speed with the landing gear in the down and locked position. So the only option, if you don't want to retract the gear, is to keep speed below the maximum gear operating speed or the maximum gear down speed. So essentially, you don't want to retract the gear when you have some sort of damage to a tire or a wheel, and then if you can't retract the gear, your situation is you have to keep the speed low. So they opt to keep the aircraft near the airport in case anything else goes wrong, or to wait until they can burn off enough fuel to get down to a landing weight that's acceptable and safest for the pilots to execute that emergency landing.
Now, Daniel, this was a 2.5-hour flight, so how much extra fuel would be on a flight like that?
I can't speak for the operations of Continental. Generally speaking, though, for operations like this, the aircraft is fueled with significantly more fuel than is necessary for the journey. Generally, the idea is the aircraft will have enough fuel to get get to its destination, and perhaps if there's a weather or if there's an airport closure there or anything like that that requires that it goes to another destination, it needs enough fuel to fly to that other airport to attempt a landing there, and then with some time left over. So, you know, even with this flight, it's showing that in the past, anywhere from 2 hours 11 minutes to 2 hours and 30 minutes, just briefly looking at the FlightAware activity log, they could have well more, you know, well in excess of that, more fuel on board for any sort of situations that might arise. And that's not counting the fact that the aircraft is not operating at the same speed and engine settings that it normally would be during a cruise. So right now it's operating much slower than it would be if it were at its high altitude cruise to Minneapolis. So conceivably there's still plenty of fuel on board and they're continuing to burn it, but there's no, but I don't know offhand the immediate fuel information for what's on board.
All right, well, we're looking at the plane now, attempting to make a landing. Let's hope for the best.
It's on the ground. Looks like it's slowing down. It's very smooth so far.
Well, apart from smooth, the best thing is that there appears to be no sparks flying off that left rear rim, or if there is, it's very minimal. I
mean, it looks like this plan is coming into place so beautiful. I think I saw one small spark there, but it's coming in. The plane is slowing down. It's slowing down.
I think they're home free.
Oh, what a relief.
You're looking at live pictures right now of a Continental jet that has just made, apparently it looks from every indication, a spectacular, safe landing at Houston's Bush Intercontinental Airport. 48 people on board, 48 passengers, a flight crew of 3. This is a Continental jet that had taken off from Houston's Bush Intercontinental Airport en route to Minneapolis when it had an accident on the rear wheel tire, but now it's back safe and sound.